everyone. Today we have our another new episodes, and this is very important. We will discuss on augmented reality. We have our world famous professor, Professor James, uh, Mr. Donalds, Professor David Smith, Professor Edwards. I want to start from Professor James. He's one of the famous scholar from Stanford University. So Professor James, how you want to analyze the augmented reality? And beside that, we are interested from Asia Pacific about your project. Yes, I know your family issues. We really miss you in 25 Octobers, but your contribution always helpful for World Talent Economy Forum, and including all of our speakers' contribution is helpful for us. Professor James.
Well, thank you. Always great to participate when I can. It's a little left of field of our work because we're very much what we call IRL as an entity with a mission in real life for building and realizing software-enabled, bioregenerative, and resilient neighborhoods around the world, specifically that are self-sustaining around clean water, high yield organic food production, renewable energy, waste resource management as the core elements of survival and thriving and flourishing, the base for flourishing. That's my work at Stanford University, is in the School of Medicine, which is the Stanford Flourishing Project. But we're also came out of the School of Mechanical Engineering for all the design work that we've been focused on. I come from a video game design background. That's my where I cut my teeth in my late teens and early 20s, and came out to California from New York after my undergrad at New York University to start a software company. And we were doing some very interesting work back then. This was now the mid 1990s on this concept of immersive environments. Because I had spent time doing cartridge game design for Sega and Nintendo, Atari, etc. I understand and understood the bandwidth and complexity of dealing with avatars. And from my perspective, I still do not see significant purpose for these kinds of data intensive, render intensive kinds of elements. However, we do see an interesting opportunity for augmented reality in real world scenarios. For instance, the ability to go to a residential real estate development site that's just an open field, and to allow the landowners and the government officials, and especially the local community members and indigenous communities there, to put on a pair of goggles and see something as an overlay of what could be there that is in balance with nature. It's in balance with open space, but also that addresses the urgent housing crisis for social affordability. So being able to make this sort of blend between the planning and the reality to move those things forward. So that's kind of our thought process in terms of augmented reality. And then, we've seen some really fantastic uses of AR in construction itself, and being able to have people on a construction site understand both the safety elements, which are critical, but also in-time delivery of things. And again, these systems are powerful for data on the ground for those things. I am really not a big fan of what's coming in terms of this quote unquote metaverse. I've had some experience again back in the days of the mid to late 1990s working with creative labs. We were creating a 3D immersive environment, and everything worked as long as everybody had the same hardware and the same equipment. So it was really expensive, cost prohibitive was not even the word for it. And again, it really didn't make a lot of sense in a lot of ways. But moreover, it is a further disassociation of humanity from the natural world. We don't need that. We need actually more immersion and connectivity with the natural world, and especially our natural resource flows. we are at a pivotal, critical moment in human history and planetary history, where we must urgently get back to these kinds of small, self-sustaining neighborhood constructs that are capable of sustaining us and then allowing us to think big thoughts and fix other big problems that we've got. So honored to be participating this week and next week at COP26 in Glasgow. I'm doing my part by presenting virtually, but we will have people from Regen Villages, which is our Dutch holding company, which is a spin-off company from Stanford, that will be on the ground and presenting as well in Glasgow. Also happy, really excited to be presenting as part of the Stanford Center for Compassion for Altruism Research and Education, CCARE, along with Edinburgh University, a panel on the 5th about reimagining a compassionate world. So this is everything that we're talking about here. From our perspective, is technology is a means to an end for human and planetary flourishing. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. One thing, I have a question, especially we get this kind of question from academia. In the COVID-19 situation, especially the developing world's different university, school, college, their education system especially heavily hampered. They cannot run their education system properly. So in that situation, Professor, do you believe that augmented reality, virtual reality, it will be the future for education system? Or
again, you have to understand something, that for every byte and bit, there's processing power. For every electron that has to go into processing power, you're drawing power from some system to generate, and there's going to be some carbon offset associated with that. At the end of the day, I'd much rather see students have soil under their fingernails and learn about permaculture and learn about farming and learn about natural ecosystem restoration, because from my perspective, that's all we got. When we focus on those things, then we have the ability to feed ourselves, hydrate ourselves, empower ourselves, and AR and VR are really overlays that should be selective in certain kinds of aspects of living, not the sort of preeminent thing like a matrix that we're plugging a coaxial cable into our neck, and then all of a sudden we are being harvested. We have to understand there's a very light bridge there between us enjoying something and then us being enjoyed by something.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Edward, what you want to add? Yes.
Well, yeah, a couple of points. First of all, just for your audience to make the clear distinction between virtual reality and augmented reality. Virtual reality is the full immersion. It's when you put on the Google headset, which my kids have out here somewhere. Then you're in a completely artificial world, right? And you can have avatars running around. You can do all sorts of interesting things. I'll say another word about that. Whereas augmented reality, as James has said, is, for example, if you're at a construction site, you can use augmented reality to look at the structure of the building that's being built, and you can look and say, well, this is where this is supposed to go. This is what this is supposed to look like. Oh, it doesn't. So there's an example of augmented reality. Augmented reality, I'm very fond of the potential and already being done for training. For example, if you're a doctor or if you're a mechanic, you can basically train on augmented reality. So you're in the real world. I'm seeing real people, but I'm also seeing, for example, an engine or maybe a human body there where I can practice operating rather than trying a couple of times on a real person and not doing very well at it. So that's the difference between virtual reality, which is full immersion, and augmented reality, which is this mix. That's for your audience. But a couple of quick points I'll make. First of all, it indeed, the big news lately, of course, has been Mark Zuckerberg announcing Meta, which is going to take, instead of just having Facebook where I'm looking here and I'm seeing what my friends are posting and I'm posting pictures of my children and all that fun stuff. He's moving ahead with this whole uh, total immersion project. Now, what I say about that is this: um, there's a process because of technology and how it develops and how it comes together that he's not. We're not going to have that immediately and in full. To me, this is a bridge where people are going to be focusing on. Well, this is what's potentially available with virtual reality, but there are things in between, and so I think what you're going to do is what he's doing is going to focus attention on the possibilities of augmented reality. Because, in a sense, augmented reality is kind of like a step in the direction of virtual reality. So I think it's going to be good for those of us who think augmented reality in the short term, certainly, is going to be the more powerful technology in terms of education, for example. Since you mentioned that, I think it's very important for interested in the World Talent Economic Forum. Well, how do you train talent? Well, this is a good way of doing it. The other thing I would say is this: I don't know what the mix is going to be. I know the science fiction dystopias of the Matrix, or what we call wireheads, right? This is someone who's just completely in a virtual world and they're completely disconnected from reality. They can't do like I can do and walk out in my backyard and there are nice trees out there and I can take my kids for walks. But I think that as long as you have an open system, people are going to experiment, people are going to find out what works, and each person and the society is going to come up with the proper mix. Because no, I don't want my kids basically to be, plugged in like the Matrix. I think experimentation is the way we're going to find our way. People are going to try virtual reality. What's interesting, by the way, is my children, my two 10-year-old girls, have tried the virtual reality thing, and they kind of like it, but they're not on it all the time because they also like to do art on their tablets and they like to read books and they like to do other stuff. So they've kind of got this mix. And so I'm not quite as worried yet about us becoming wireheads as maybe some people are. I think we're going to find our mix so that we keep our humanity and use the technology for what it is. It's a tool. It helps us.
Mhm. Thank you, Professor David Smith. Yes.
Come on, Edward, I'd like to be a wirehead sometimes. But to me, as I look at augmented reality, it really is a very interesting place to be today. The for the global market size for augmented reality was about $18 billion in 2020, and depending on which of the forecasts you look at, between now and 2030, the compound annual growth rate has kind of gone from the low end of about 43% up to about 54% as a compound annual growth rate. That really is a very large growth rate going forward. Um, and what's really to me interesting about virtual reality today is we kind of focus on what we see, much like the Meta announcement of their metaverse, which was really uh, beginning to look at the cars and robots and flying fish. Well, you know, to me, I think we can do better than that as we look at the metaverse and augmented reality put together. And we're seeing so many good examples of it being used every day, no matter where we are. Um, and we're seeing a lot of consortia and alliances and joint ventures being put together today around that space. But we kind of need to remember ourselves that what augmented reality is doing is it's taking the real world and supplementing it with perceptual information, sometimes across multiple sensory modalities. And, it can be visual, auditory, haptic, semi-sensor. You can even put smell into it to enhance the impact of augmented reality. And that is some of the places where I see really working there. Also, you begin to see how it has emerged. I was first introduced to augmented reality a couple of decades ago. And what we called it back then was computer mediated reality or mixed reality back then. And we see that kind of working up and going and working. Um, we've talked in earlier issues of some of the real-time applications. There is a battery truck factory being built down the road from me here in Austin. And they're using augmented reality to dramatically speed up the process of building this gigafactory to do it. The inspectors that are coming out there are using augmented reality to walk through and working the pieces. We also see it being used as by the construction workers to know where that piece of equipment sits, so they know actually where to put the pieces behind it versus trying to read just a blueprint and do it, which really has increased the speed and accuracy of what they're doing. And we're seeing it just so many places. Like Edward said, in healthcare, we're seeing it in transportation, we're seeing it in education, we're seeing it in science. Uh, One of the very interesting virtual reality, which has now become more augmented reality, is in the oil exploration world. Um, wow, 25 years ago, I helped design an immersive space to be able to walk through the models of underground oil uh, deposits. That and they've now taken and transformed that into an augmented reality that can be used to help the people in the field drill, find it, adjust the things to make sure they're making the correct corrections on the directional drilling. So, I mean, it's just a ton of different applications and different usage that you're going to see. And the biggest other growth area is, and this is a COVID lesson on augmented reality, is that there's the big, huge rising demand for remote assistance and for collaboration and to do more modeling before you begin to bring things out and release them to your customers and others. And augmented reality has a big role of helping enhance that, optimize the processes, and really have a great future to go from there.
Thank you, Professor Donald.
Unmute.
I am. I just did. Well, a lot of people mentioned, I think right now, one of the main uses of augmented reality is in construction. And even in hospitals, in medical, one of the main uses that they have is to do things like find things in buildings and find things in places for defibrillators and such. One augmented reality application that I know of that is running is that some people I know have an augmented reality company where as they build buildings, but they go in and they have to at some point there's no walls. Then they eventually put the sheetrock in. It's just in California we build all the buildings pretty much the same way because it's an earthquake resistant way of doing it. We just put 2x4s and then put sheetrock over it. So there's a skeleton of the building, and then we just put sheetrock over it. So you build the skeleton first, and then you put in the plumbing and the wires, and then you cover it with sheetrock and stucco or something on the outside. And so what they do is they take photographs of it at every step of the way, and then they use it for augmented reality. If you come in, you have to change anything, you just put on these glasses, and lo and behold, It's as if you can see right through the walls and see exactly where the wires are, exactly where the plumbing is, and you can modify anything that you want to in the building without having to hunt around by taking out entire walls to look for things. I just remodeled our house, and we had to do that, take out enormous parts of walls just to find out where stuff was. So that's a wonderful thing. And I also know of a company that uses drones to go around construction sites, large, very large sites, and map the sites using drones, and then virtual augmented reality, they can put on these glasses and walk around and be able to see exactly where everything is behind buildings, and be able to understand exactly what the distances for things are, and measure things and do all kinds of amazing things in 3 dimensions, so they can see things. They can take things down and see where they were before exactly, and a lot of really cool things that way. There's a theory, nurses can see where veins are in people, and in theory they've gotten to the point where when they're doing operations, everybody's heart isn't exactly the same. Sometimes they'll be doing surgery for people, and they'll open them up and they'll find out that, oh no, this person's enough different than normal people that we're going to have some trouble here. Their veins are smaller, their veins are in a slightly different place, something's weird about them, and we're going to have to think fast to make sure the surgery goes right. Well, now they can do it's easy to do 3-dimensional image with MRIs and other kinds of tools, and they can use augmented reality so that when they're doing the surgery, they can actually see what's going on, what they're working on before they do it. I saw a wonderful science fiction show a little while ago where they come up with an augmented reality game where there was in their house there would be people trying to get them, and they'd have to fight with them or get away from them, and they'd scare them, and they'd do all this kind of stuff. So they'd actually be playing this video game in real life or in their real house. Part of the story was that this one strange girl would keep appearing in the video game that wasn't supposed to be there, that was sort of haunting them, and it was very, very creepy, and it was very, that was pretty cool. So I can imagine things like that happening. I think there's a wonderful book called Propaganda by a guy named Edward Bernays, which was, he was Freud's nephew, I think that was, and it was really set the tone. He's called the father of public relations, and it really set the tone for trying to understand about influencing people on a mass scale. And I think the recent whistleblower about Facebook does show that it's possible to influence people in subconscious ways that basically influence our neural structure. We didn't live in cities. We didn't have available all the food we wanted, everything we wanted, not all that long ago. And it's just like if you're a parent, there's times at certain ages, well, basically with girls it's younger, but with men our prefrontal cortex, where we basically our executive function, which is the part of our brain that controls our impulses, doesn't completely develop until we're about 25 years old. So our ability to modify our behavior and have good judgment isn't there. And so so more primal influences kind of rule us. And so that's why little children at Halloween, which just happened here, is a holiday where kids are given boundless amounts of candy Parents have to kind of watch the kids and dole out the candy, or they would eat it all at once. I know I certainly did that when I was a kid. And so Facebook has used tools to try and figure out what the candy is for the users. And there's techniques like A/B testing, where what they can do is divide the network into two portions, and they can just do statistical analysis, and they can say, they can compare, and they say, if we do this in this group, the A group, and we do this in the B group, which group are people most likely to act a certain way that we desire them to act, which is to click on an ad, have a fight with other people, do the behavior that we desire. And then they modify all of Facebook so that they get the most desirable behavior. I have a friend who studies basically the neuroscience and the neurochemicals that are involved in this. So he teaches classes and courses about how to design user interfaces that create the most dopamine in certain situations, the most it's so early in the morning, my neurochemicals aren't coming right to my brain, but he's actually works with a neuroscientist on this. So basically, he's working to try and use user interfaces to manipulate people as much as possible, and it's part of a social sciences source called persuasive technology. And there's a laboratory at Stanford, there's a laboratory at University of Oulu that I'm involved with, and there's conferences on it. And so we work using technology to try and influence people's thoughts and behavior. There's a whole group of people that are working on this. So it's descended from Bernays in a sense. So I think that we already see I think that Edward's idea that the market is going to work it all out it's not empirically justified. So that's all I can say.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you for having me again on this program. It's a wonderful program on various topics. Augmented reality is, again, as I think some of the other panelists have talked about, is technology, and it's a tool. It's not the be-all or end-all. It is important, and we need to understand it, and we need to know how actually to use this tool. Our business in our mission is climate restoration, climate repair, which is not psychology, nor is it other issues. It's kind of in alignment with what's going on at COP26, which many of our members are attending right now. I'm in Cold Spring, New York, on the Hudson River, so I'm seeing climate change right before my eyes. One of the things that we feel about augmented reality, as opposed to VR, virtual reality, is augmented reality absolutely can be used for training. We have 7 joint ventures where we're going to be implementing augmented reality to use training and people how to operate our systems, kind of the way pilots are trained before they ever get in the cockpit. So they get in a virtual cockpit, and then they take off, and they get the lay of the land, the stick, the acceleration, the deceleration, the landing, and then they actually go out and do it. This is what we're going to be implementing with our 7 joint ventures to turn waste into resources, and that's a critical component of climate change. The other component of augmented reality is we can use augmented reality through drone technology, and if you go to our website, I think you can see some of the videos where we're using drone technology to show our systems. But the drone technology is only one component. When you integrate it with augmented reality, then you can do just like was described by the other panelists. like doing heart surgery, you can go in and find out where the issues are and how to solve any potential problems. But a third element of it is to actually use it to keep track of the feedstock, meaning the material that most people look at as waste, either as municipal solid waste or woody biomass from the fires around the world, or cow manure or things like that, so that you can keep track of it together with blockchain technology and drone technology. So you can integrate three technologies there to actually use augmented reality to keep track of what's going into the system. And then on the back end, usually we produce different types of outputs from our what we use as pyrolysis at a large scale. So we're processing 120 metric tons of waste a day per system. In one location, we're going to be deploying 20 some odd systems. So you just do the math. It's a lot. It's industrially scaled. But we can also do small systems, as somebody else on the panel mentioned earlier, that you need to do things that are local and close to the to where you need to be. So we have a whole range of technologies, but those technologies are meaningless unless they're managed properly, and it's about human beings to do that. And like what Donald was talking about, there is a psychological element involved in this, and we need to use the virtual reality to create facts on the ground, not fake information. So information is critical. A scientific method approach is what we follow. We believe in science. We know that science changes as things occur. But one of the things that we're doing on the back end is we create a material known as biochar. And biochar is one of the 6 recognized carbon sequestration tools by the IPCC that's taking place at COP26 this week and next week. And one of the things that we're doing is we're going to be using augmented reality together with drone technology, together with blockchain technology, to integrate that to track to see what kind of char is coming out the back end, because different feedstock of waste, which is no longer waste to us, but a supply chain, turns into different types of char. And those chars are capable of reducing further climate impacts, such as sequestering carbon in soil for thousands of years, or being able to sequester carbon in construction material for hundreds of years or longer. There's a lot of things that can be done, and it's all integrated. We see augmented reality as an integration tool, as part of what we're doing. And we think that all the comments that have come before me are absolutely 100% valid. And we need to take everybody's opinion into account. And we need to work together to get a positive outcome. One of the things that's happening, and I'll just leave it at this, is that a lot of people at COP26 are expecting a disaster outcome. Right today, it happens to be about finance. But I think augmented reality needs to be financed along with other things. And we can do that through a tool for startups, by the way, called pre-issuance credit enhancement guarantees for startups that can allow us to gain money and get it back to either bondholders or shareholders in a timely fashion, and approach that way. The other thing that I'm going to leave a note on is that if anybody wants to look at an attitude and a psychological approach, I recommend that you read Catherine Hayhoe's book, Getting It Done, or latest book, I think that's the title. I don't have it in front of me, but Catherine Hayhoe is a climate scientist. She integrates a lot of different tools herself. So I welcome everybody's participation in getting climate restoration, climate repair on the way, and using augmented reality to get that done along with the other tools. And I'm out. I'm complete.
Looks like we've lost Sharif, so let me jump in, Donald, and throw a couple more comments out on the table about augmented reality. To me, as I continue to look at where augmented reality is today, there's a lack of really policies and best practices around how do you really design the user experience in augmented reality today. Sharif often asked ourselves, what is the impact of this for developing nations? And where are the opportunities for entrepreneurship and for science and things in the developing nation space? And really, in the augmented reality space, it really is looking at how you put the value chain in place in each of the areas. And in some areas, there is not clear value chain places on how do you adapt augmented reality to use it. We can see the advantages, but the value proposition still needs work to go. And that's a place where entrepreneurs can begin to go in and help it. The other places is augmented reality should have a lot of uses in the underdeveloped areas of the world. And particularly as you begin to go in there and say, how can I leapfrog generations of technology? How can I leapfrog infrastructure changes? And augmented reality really has a great place in there. And we've seen it being implemented, as everyone has said, in all these different places in healthcare and construction and education, but it's also being adapted into the government space as well, and beginning to help us look where augmented reality is going to have another big impact. And this is where there's a lot of opportunities right now is as we look at the next generation of the glasses and things from Magic Leap, from Sony, from Google. Facebook has glasses they're working on in some of their R&D centers. Same with Samsung. Is that there's a new generation coming. There's a new generation that is going to be less obtrusive than they are before. Um, Magic Leap just announced a new $500 million investment in Magic Leap this week. And that is going to be a place where you're going to see more and more innovation coming out. But it really is how do we take our real world that we see and work in and every day and begin to come back and say, I am now in this new space, this different one, but it's emerged with my real world. And the investments in the space are beginning to really pick up dramatically. As I mentioned before, the compound annual growth rates are really climbing. One of the firms actually showed 151% compound annual growth, which is not sustainable. But it's a place where there's a lot of opportunities. The usages are really wherever you can put your mind and business case around. So the potential for entrepreneurship is very high in the uses of augmented reality.
Donald, can I respond because I have to leave for a COP26 meeting?
Of course.
So I'll just jump in. I apologize for, but I think David asked some really critical questions. I think they're all important.
Of course.
One of the things that I find really critical is that people ask me about other technology, such as biochar. What is it used for? And people talk about it all day long. To me, technology. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So what's happening is the technology. I look at it. Somebody, I think it might have been Donald, who mentioned the fact that there's open heart surgery, and you can use augmented reality to discover issues about heart, transplants and things like that, or heart bypasses. But the other component of it is that I think that if you look at the technology, people don't really, at the end of the day, whether they're consumers or they're business people using this technology, they want to know what it does for them. And it's a tool. So if I go in for a triple bypass surgery, I don't ask the doctor what scope he's using, whether it's Siemens or GE. I just want to know that he's using a proper scope, obviously, in the right certified technology. And I think certification is important here, but also that the team knows what they're doing with this technology and that they can successfully implement the surgery and get the patient back to health and get them walking up the mountain again. So that's my point of view. I think that everybody on this panel has been doing a great job. I want to commend everybody. I have to go. I apologize, but great conversation. Augmented reality is an important tool, and it's a tool in our on our tool belt. So I have to leave it at that. I say goodbye to everybody and best of luck.
You're muted.
Mr. Ching. Yes, Mr. Ching.
Yeah. You want me to? Can you hear
Discuss
me?
on augmented reality.
Yeah. Okay. Well, augmented reality seems magic leap. All these things are a little bit old. Now the new thing is this. I email you the metaverse. Facebook. Okay. I think they try to get put their memory to use. Okay. Their data center. Okay. So this augmented reality will take up lots of data, and this metaverse will take even more huge amount of data. You see. I'm not looking into this. Okay, I have my own priorities, and my priority, the third priority, the first priority, the zeroth priority is knowledge, then epigenetic lifestyle for age reduction, number one. Number two is a currency reset. Okay. The number three is close to what you people talking about, augmented reality. This is what we try to do, is to create a robot that can take over all human labors. Okay, once they take over, then augmented reality will be done by them. Will be part of it. It will be part of the picture. But the idea is to go for the whole thing. That is the goal. Ultimately, pole science, of which I'm the founder, think we need to self-create ourselves. We create humans, not to create augmented reality. Augmented reality obviously it can be on the planning stage. You see, you have something that moving. I would love to see my dead mentors and my dead parents, augmented reality. You see, so this I'm not really an expert in the field, so I just want to listen to what you people think, basically. You see, but I would say, there's two sides to this world. One side is the good side, the happiness side. The other side, the unhappy side. Okay, the unhappy side should be solved. So all this a crisis. There's a financial crisis, which I think, I think our group is the only group that can solve that, because we predict the savings and loan, and we predict and solve the subprime. But they didn't give us any credit. The next one is going to be really big. Okay, then there's the health crisis, which is already upon us. And there will be the complexity crisis, there will be environmental crisis. Then the biggest one is the survival crisis. The human race deserve to inherit the earth. Okay, we are focused on science. Okay, we do not get beyond science, and you cannot inherit the earth with just science. Science is not enough. So I found the pole science. Okay, we need to solve problems in social science, in life science, and beyond. You see, we need to understand DNA, what is the meaning of the universal intelligence. And we're not addressing. You see, this is augmented reality belongs to the happy side. It's not the sad side. Okay, the sad side is where we need to attack. It's urgent. Okay, financial crisis. I cannot predict exactly when it's going to happen, but I guess next year we'll have inflation. Okay, there's an equation. rate of return must be greater than interest rate. The interest rate must be greater than inflation. Okay, this equation is the logical equation. It's the logical system order of the economy. And when the inflation goes out real high, the interest rate has to go up. The rate of return has to be higher than interest in order for people to invest, borrowing money to invest. Okay, this crisis is it's an instability. It's driving. It's going worse and worse. We have a higher equilibrium. Okay, by pumping money into if you want stop pumping money, you see now fortunately all the money has been absorbed into the stock market. The stock market is manipulate the market. Okay, it's not real. It does not produce income. So it's kind of like a gold. It's a manipulate. It's a manufactured market. So when money absorbing the stock market, that's great. Okay, we don't have inflation. Okay, money is going to stop. But if the money come out into the real world, we're going to have inflation. Okay, everything going to cost so much more. And this crisis upon us, it's going to happen sooner or later, bigger than the savings and loan, bigger than subprime.
Thank you.
And the things just keep going. And now you are talking about this happy thing, which we agree. You do this augmented reality, great. We say you just go ahead do it. And Facebook is doing the metaverse, which is also good. Very very happy thing. But I go dancing all the time. I have the real people. I have the reality. Is that
Thank
touch
you.
real people?
Yes.
So basically, that's my view. I guess I just need to listen to people. I hope I can steer you into the direction that my direction is.
Thank you, Mr. Den. Mr. Den.
It sounds like it'd be great to get some metaverse dancing lessons from you.
Good suggestion. No, I think they're going into sex.
Yeah, I think this augmented reality topic is really a subtopic of the looming metaverse, which everyone knows that Facebook has rebranded their parent company as, because they apparently want to act as a portal to all the things that will go on or can go on or are going on in the metaverse. And I think it's a metaphor. It's like a metaphor that has an actual existence, and we do need to use it for all of the good that we can get out of it. I think governments are probably going to be behind the curve on this for a while. I see more early adoption in the corporate sector on this. Corporations were very on the ball to add a corporate office called CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer. And the mission of the Chief Sustainability Officer is usually described as, what is our business model going to look like 10, 15, 20 years out? Are we going to have a workable business model? And I think the way to ask and answer this question is in the metaverse. It's the idea of a digital twin of simulations, which are really becoming far more mature with things like machine learning. We can actually do much more robust prediction of where the current activities are going to take us. But on a larger scale, what we're seeing is, I think, the transition of evolution from dealing in atoms to dealing in bits. Things are evolving much more faster in the information space now and then in the material world space or in the biological space. So really, instead of a chief sustainability officer, I think there needs to be a chief singularitarian officer, because if these technological trends continue, Ray Kurzweil thinks it could be in the 2040s or even sooner, where we have runaway hyperintelligence, where we have potentially nanotechnology, things that could completely disrupt the world, our universe as we know it right now. And I think that I would like to be a force for municipal governments, which I think is where really the action happens, to start talking about these issues and actually have an office of a metaverse officer, a singularity officer, and we need to realize that I'm a fan of the zero waste idea. Waste, the things that we call waste, are just resources that are out of place, and this is a great use for the metaverse. We can say, here's something that was formerly being considered waste, but it's actually a resource over here. So we can find these paths to move things where they need to be in the digital twin or metaverse universe, and thereby examine all the possible alternatives. So it's really a great place to move the Overton window of discussion to about incorporating metaverse and digital twin analysis into our governance systems. And augmented reality is going to be great, and everything people have said has been really enlightening here. I really am glad to hear all your great thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Donald.
I think, yeah, I see we've strayed to the metaverse again, which is, I think that that makes a lot of sense, because augmented reality is, it's valuable. It's a nice tool, and I think that we've got a long way to go before it can be widely used. It does have a huge AI component to it, because I was just reading a book on the history of artificial intelligence. It's interesting because the book is actually kind of dicey, because it has a part where it says the PDP group, and it says, well, the PDP group was named after a widely used powerful processor, which is not true. It was actually named after, it was obviously named after DEC's PDP 11 series. And so it seems a little dicey, but they point out that the thing that we think of as AI was really came from computer vision work originally. And I'm sure that's correct. And so the point of the matter is that a lot of what we're doing with augmented reality is computer vision has to. So you have to analyze what you're looking at to be able to add stuff in an appropriate way. So it dovetails with what we're doing in self-driving cars, other kinds of things like that. So and I think that that's a point to it, that it's just extremely data intensive, computer vision driven. When we get to the metaverse, I look around at the world that we live in, and I see what's happening, and I see, there's a reason for optimism, and there's also some frightening things, which are the ability that marketers have to persuade people of things that just aren't true. And the research has shown that people have an appetite for ambiguity and an appetite for uncertainty. And people have, if you think about it, like knowing something has to be a neural process where you get a feeling in your body and your brain that, yes, I know that. It's just yes, okay, I'm done. I know that. And that's actually called need for cognitive closure. And you can actually study it. They think that it's maybe a trait like extroversion and introversion. It's something that people, some people are fine with not having cognitive closure. And so scientists to be a good scientist, you have to be able to always entertain the possibility that you really don't know anything. and that you're always willing to continue to learn. And to me, I think that if you really want to teach somebody science and they really understand science, it's not the scientific method so much as the ability to adopt a point of view that you really don't know anything and you're always willing to learn things. And however, many people don't feel comfortable that way, and they want explanations for things, which is why we have conspiracy theories. I don't know if you know this, but a bunch of people that believe in this one conspiracy theory in the United States gathered because they believed that President Kennedy was going to rise again and reinstate ex-President Trump yesterday. It didn't happen. But they actually sincerely believed that, and they all showed up together to where it was in Dallas, where this was supposed to happen. So, and that was, I believe, I think psychologists think it's because they needed some sort of explanations to make sense of the world, and we all do that. And so, one of my worries about things like the metaverse and things like that is it becomes even easier to persuade people to be a certain way. And so we're faced with a dilemma that's sort of at a policy level is what can we do to make it to a situation where people are looking at global warming in a sensible way. They are looking at vaccines in a sensible way. They're looking at things. And I just want to finish by throwing out the idea of John Rawls, who's a wonderful philosopher who is very highly regarded in the idea of kind of moral philosophy for a social thing. And he came up with the idea I just love, is he said, what kind of a society would you design if you imagined that you were going to be born into this society with no money, into a family with no money and no connections? If you were going to be born into this family in the lowest social strata with nothing, what kind of a society would you design in that case? What would society be like if you were the poorest of the poor? How would you like that society to be? Think about that. And that's, I think, worth something for us all to think about. Yeah. I'm going to end with that. You're muted.
This is an excellent session. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks for today. I want to start from Mr. Ching.
Yeah, well, after I listened to Don and Don talk about this, I fear that this is a business strategy for Facebook to put their data center, in use. They are the leader in data centers, so they got lots of memories. And the way to really exhaust other companies to come in is to show their power in controlling data, containing data. So I send you something, Sherry. I send you something about the universal permanent device. Okay, which I believe everyone should have a keychain like device. It will record everything the whole life of the person. Okay, this augmented reality, metaverse, all fit into this. You store your data. If you can store in meta uniform, then it would come out, the person continue move around. It's like the guy continue to live. He's going to live forever. People can see him moving around. So it's sort of fit into that. But I think all these things driven by business, you see. Sorry to say, it's all money oriented, and if it's money oriented, there could be something wrong. Let's see if you agree. You see, our view is Paul Science thinks we should all go to knowledge oriented. You see, and the money oriented is better than politics oriented. Politics oriented, they want to fight. Okay, they want to get the people together, gang together, have a gang and fight. So augmented reality fit into somewhere into this whole scheme of things, and it basically takes lots of memory. Okay, whoever has the maximum memory will win. Okay, my prediction long time ago was whoever controls software will win. Okay, so now just recently Microsoft has become the largest company in the world. Okay, so they control software. Any kind of software threat to Microsoft, they will buy it. So basically, the software is the key. Okay, so I would say artificial intelligence will eventually going to handle Microsoft. Okay, so all this business concern, it's not, it's not a crisis. It's like people having lots of fun, making money, And I'm more into crisis, so I'm right now working toward peace. Okay, so today we're going to have a military crisis, by the way. Okay, because nobody's going to, say I can take the loss, U.S. versus China. Okay, I don't want to distract from this augmented reality, but it is a part of the picture, and today's picture, it could be one of the most important. Okay, data fighting for memories, and Microsoft is fighting for software, and I've been talking to Microsoft to try to make them convert their partially automated to complete automated software. So it's kind of interesting to bring this thing up, especially if you connect it to, like Ron said, that we connect it to the metaverse. You see, this business, this is the key point. The business of using lots of data that can keep the competitor out of the business. You see, that could be the strategy of Facebook. It changed its name to Meta. Okay, what can you say? He got a point of view. He's a very good business thinker. So I think he got a point. That is the main point.
Thank you for your analysis. Mr. Dan, what's your concluding remarks today?
Yeah, I kind of jumping back to the the metaverse theme, which I guess is close enough related to augmented reality to talk about. I'd like to treat the metaverse kind of like air travel gets treated. We have a UN level organization that helps all the airport and airline systems of the world mesh smoothly, and typically in the law, the law treats the internet right now as a building. So if you do something illegal, if you break into some part of the internet you're not supposed to be in, that's considered burglary because the internet is a building. But the metaverse is more like an atmosphere, and people are moving through it with exotic flying machines. So I think the metaphor of regulating, or not really regulating so much as making consistent what's the term, conventions. Okay, we have global level conventions for things like the Postal Union, the International Telecommunications Union, and the ICAO is the UN level agency for air transport. So maybe there's going to be a UN level agency for metaverse transport, because that's really what we're doing in the metaverse. Is we're moving in. We're not moving atoms, we're moving bits. But nonetheless, we don't want these things to crash into each other. We don't want people to get injured. All the same things apply. In air travel, we have a requirement that people use English as the international communication language. So for the metaverse, I'd like to propose that you use English, Esperanto, and your native language, and you have interoperability using a reference language. You get good translations by going from bilingual Esperanto speakers. But I think that's the great promise for the metaverse, is that we can enhance human, what I like to call humane rights, and one of them, the most important one, is through freedom to move. If you're not happy where you are, you should move somewhere else. That's kind of the basic right for all conscious beings. So, yeah, those are hopefully some good thoughts that we can move forward with. And thanks again for the topic.
Thank you. Mr. Donald, what's your concluding remarks?
Well, I just want to go back to the augmented reality and bounce off something Hugh said, which I totally agree with. I was part of the, I was technical lead, I guess, for the Microsoft antitrust case. A friend of mine that was part of the consortium for the Microsoft antitrust case came to me and they said, you know, we're a bunch of lawyers and we don't really understand what an operating system is. And we know that you teach operating system principles. Would you help us out? So I explained to them very carefully what an operating system was, because Microsoft was in the process of claiming that the actual quote was, is we could put a ham sandwich in it and call it part of the operating system. And, you know, and I explained to them, no, the operating system was a software that interfaced between the applications and the hardware, and that's what it was, and that's what it's always been and always would be. And so they couldn't actually integrate Office into the operating system and still have Office be an operating system. And we won. And they separated Office and they had to make an API, and because of that, there's other word processors that work on Microsoft. So there's a wonderful book called Regional Advantage that talks about how digital equipment company, and I mentioned PDP earlier, which is funny. Boston was the high-tech center of the United States in the 80s, early 80s, and by the end of the 80s, it was a distant second to Silicon Valley. And one of the main reasons for that is that Silicon Valley adopted open standards. And so you didn't have to buy a disk drive from one place. DEC, on the other hand, had a very closed vertical system. So if you bought a DEC system, you had to buy DEC disk drives, DEC terminals, DEC everything. And so then there started to get to be competition between the disk drives, all the different kinds of things, so people could mix and match. And the prices just went down like crazy. And everything got better, the quality got better, all kinds of wonderful things. So where I'm going with this is that one of the things that we're hoping would happen with augmented reality is that we can develop open standards and standards for it, so that all of the people that are working in it and the vendors that are creating things in it can interoperate with each other, so that we can not have a Microsoft own the whole entire thing or something like that. Because if that happens, it'll allow for a great deal of innovation and and it'll lower the cost, raise the quality, and all kinds of wonderful things. So I hope that everybody understands that and pressures everyone and volunteers. You can volunteer for standards committee. It's a wonderful, absolutely delightful thing to do, and I would highly recommend it. I got to do that a little bit with POSIX, so I think it's something I really recommend. So that's what I want to say. Thank you. I always love being with these wonderful, brilliant people.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an excellent discussion, and thank you, Mr. Ching, Mr. Dan, and Mr. Donald for joining today's session. This is really helpful for us, and World Talent Economy Forum, we are trying to develop ourselves as a social television, as well as definitely we focus on media, academy, and most important thing is that we are engaging with developing nations. So your contribution will be very helpful for us. And I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye, Dan. Bye, Don. Bye, Sheriff.